Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Simon Tupman here, welcoming you all to the October edition of Law Chat, which is a monthly series of conversations offering insights and inspiration for the legal sector. And today, of course, is brought to you in association with Moore Markhams, accountants and advisors offering specialist financial services for the legal profession. And it's my great pleasure to welcome our guests today. From New South Wales, joining us from Sydney, are Dr. Bob Murray and Dr. Alicia Fortinberry, both internationally recognised in legal circles, it's probably fair to say. Dr. Bob is internationally recognised in strategy leadership, influencing human motivation and behavioural change. And Dr. Alicia has earned global recognition for her long-lasting and powerful work with top-tier law firms. She enables firms to shape strategy, develop the right leadership, and embrace the right culture by drawing on the latest science of human motivation and change. And of course, they both collaborate and have done so for many years. And as a result of that collaboration, they've also written several bestsellers, and soon to be published is the second edition of one of those bestsellers, Leading the Future, the human science of law firm strategy and leadership. And I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit later this afternoon. But can I just say a warm welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us on Law Chat this afternoon.
Thank you, Simon, so much. It's great to be here.
It absolutely is.
Great to have you. And you know, the title for today is an interesting one. We came up with the title, What is a Law Firm? And I suppose historically, lawyers might not have any difficulty answering that question, but with the dynamism of the current market at the moment, everything that's going on and shaping our world, of course, I guess it means it's raising many questions about, well, what is a law firm? How is a law firm going to evolve in the future? And what are some of the structural or even cultural changes likely to be as we sort of emerge from this new age of pandemic lockdown? So I'm going to invite either of you to sort of kick us off here and say, well, how do you see the future emerging, both in the shorter term and the media term?
I know that Alicia and I have slightly different views on this, one of the first things I think to say is that since we wrote the first edition of Leading the Future, which was back in 2015, Richard Susskind had just come out with his works, which said basically that law firms were going to end and professional services were going to end and the world was going to be disastrous. I disagreed with him then, and I think in the intervening 6 years we've proven that he's wrong, very wrong. I think there is a tremendous future for professional services firms and for law firms, and I thought so then, and I believe so now. I think they'll be different, however. I think that one of the things I think which lawyers have to realize is that they are not in the business of selling law, and they never were. And that the success they had in selling law was a byproduct of their ability to sell something else. And I think what needs to happen in the law firm of the future will not be specifically a law firm, I don't think. It'll be more a firm of people who can give wisdom to their clients, who can give advice to them, rather like a concierge, a more general sort of advice, strategic look at what the client's needs are, with a legal background, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So I think it'll be a very different. There's a great friend of mine who is the managing partner of one of the very, very large law firms. And he was saying that one of the interesting things that in his particular practice, he hadn't advised people on law for something like 10 years. But they came to him for advice on a whole range of matters, which were only tangential to law. And I think that's the direction of law going future. Alicia?
Oh, I know Simon was going to say something, but it reminds me actually of a story. When you say that, I was just thinking a story of somebody we both know who was head of M&A for a very large law firm. And this guy was known as the most cutthroat lawyer, enormous rainmaker, incredibly successful. And he was telling me once what he thought a lawyer was about. And he told the story of, he said, it's your judgment and the relationship. And he told the story about walking into a room where the CEO of an organization was doing something that everybody was trying to talk him out of because it was even more ruthless than my client, and it was dodgy from a moral perspective, and everybody was trying to give this guy the facts about why they shouldn't do it and the legal things, and my client just walked in and kind of looked at him, and he said, let's say the guy's name was Dan, it wasn't, but Dan, this isn't who you are. That's all he said. And the guy said, well, maybe it isn't, and shifted his position. And that's they had that kind of relationship.
Yeah, it seems to me it's almost, as you're suggesting there, a more holistic approach to being a lawyer, and I would presume that requires a high degree of emotional intelligence to be able to see the broader perspective.
I think that's true, and I think when I talk to people who are in the business of hiring lawyers, they're no longer in the business of strictly looking at what the person knows or how clever they were, or even what grades they got at law school, although all that counts. But more than that, they're looking for people who can form relationships, who are good at relationship forming, who are good listeners, who can ask questions which aren't directly related to the law, but broader, so they can bring the client out or bring their colleagues out to find out what's really going on. And so you get this more sort of EQ, if you like, or even SQ, social intelligence approach, becoming far more prevalent in terms of hiring. And certainly that's what I've been told over the last few months, and it's become very, very interesting, because that's something which, as I say, I've been universally told over the last few months.
One of the things I think, Bob, that you and I find interesting is the interplay and the contradiction sometimes between the focus of the firm and relationship building.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens, particularly with successful, ambitious lawyers, is that their whole being becomes focused on pleasing the client.
Mm.
And when your whole being is focused on pleasing somebody, actually it can harm the relationship. It certainly harms their mental health.
Mm.
You know, many law firms that I know is like a weekend, what's a weekend? You know, just extraordinarily long days and no weekends. And even junior lawyers being asked to work on weekends. But this is because in many ways, the partners who are in charge of that transaction feel they can't say no, or you know, would Monday work as well as Friday night, or whatever it is, or would Tuesday or Wednesday work as well? Can we negotiate? They don't set boundaries. And the interesting thing that the research shows is that not only in the long run does this decimate yourself, your team, the collaboration, the mental health, and the energy that you're trying to bring, but it actually weakens the relationship that lawyers have with their clients, because we, don't have confidence in people who kind of don't have confidence in themselves and stand up for what they need for them and their teams. And by the way, I know many lawyers who really do focus on doing that. But it also says that this isn't a two-way relationship, and nobody really feels comfortable in a one-way relationship. So one message I would give, and I do give, that Bob and I do give to lawyers at all levels, is where are your boundaries with clients and with each other, so that you can not only be resilient, but actually have stronger relationships.
Yeah, I know one of the very interesting things, that just following on what Alicia was saying, is that any relationship is defined as a mutual satisfaction of need. In other words, both parties must be satisfying their own needs within the context of the relationship. What I find with lawyers is that often they're very, very good at finding out what the client needs of them. They're very bad at telling the client what their needs are of the client. What do I need you to do or not to do to make this relationship worthwhile for me? And unless you have those both going, then you really don't have a relationship, at least not in human terms.
So let me ask you both, given the nature of legal education today, and it's probably not too far removed from how it has been for the last few decades, what is it going to take to develop the lawyer of the future, someone who has high levels of emotional intelligence, who is good at building relationships, is good at setting boundaries, and is able to take care of his or her emotional state of being and mental health?
A lot.
Big question.
You know, it is a good question. We have these inherent contradictions in our society, in our education, and in our firms, and particularly in many ways law firms, between what we know is important and what we actually foster on people, or the basic assumptions that we're still working under. We know that relationships are important. The professors know it, the schools know it, the firms know it, we all know it. And yet we build up a highly competitive environment that goes all the way through. And we try to overlay it with collaboration. You know, students do collaborative exercises. You know, we're going to be working with the College at Law on a leadership course, and, you know, we're doing all those exercises with them, trying to get them to do things together. And that's all well and good. But if the basic approach is that we are here to rise above others, to earn money, certain amounts of money, which to even the partners becomes meaningless, because it's more about, am I valued, than the bottom line, but we focus on that so much, then we're giving mixed messages and puts people in a kind of a double bind. Yes, you say I should be collaborative, but you really, with all the things that you put in place to seem otherwise, you really are still gearing me on the amount of revenue that I bring in. And I think this starts in law school with the pressure on grades. And I don't know how you would revise the education system per se, but I would say, and I think Bob would agree, that you would bring this into a more human-focused environment. And human beings are all about relationships. And therefore, you would have to kind of think what you did from the bottom up. That we're all about how we are together in order to enjoy each other and feel valued. That's it. Right, Bob? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I have not yet met a high-performing lawyer who, when you really question them, had a good relationship with their parents. Not one.
Oh, Bob! Oh my God! It is true.
But it is true. And the problem is that the law schools are attracting these highly competitive people who've been only praised when they won. They're only praised for winning the races, only praised for getting high marks at school. And these are the ones that the law firms have traditionally been choosing as their people, the ones that got the highest grade. And then they wonder why it is that that a huge number of them come out of law school depressed. You know, something like 50% of all law school graduates are clinically depressed. 70%. I did a study in New South Wales, and other studies have been done since then. This is a couple of years ago. But what I found, and what other studies have shown to be true, is that 70% of lawyers suffer from major depressive disorder, at least at some stage during each year. This is huge, and it's unsustainable. And this is one of the big, and they're becoming more and more depressed. And it's not COVID. It was there before COVID. COVID only accentuated the issue.
I'd say that's right. And I recently wrote an article in which I referred to the first book that I wrote in 2000, which cited the high levels of depression amongst lawyers. And here we are 21 years later, and I begin to wonder, well, what on earth has actually changed? But given your observations that you've made there about you know, the higher levels of depression that lawyers are still experiencing, and also whether or not legal education may have something to do with it, the question I want to put to you is there not a responsibility now, today, on leaders of legal businesses, law firms, however you wish to refer to them, to set the tone through the philosophy that they espouse in their firms, by saying this firm is more than just meeting budget or making money for the shareholders or the partners?
Mm.
Yeah.
One of Alicia and I's great friends is the managing partner, the national managing partner of one of the large mid-sized law firms in Australia. And he has been battling for some years to get his partners to understand that there's more to life than just making money. You know, and they are the most successful. And one of the interesting things is that he is pushing for his lawyers to sort of say, wait a minute, you're dealing with clients is not about getting money from them, it's about helping them. You know, it's about creating a relationship with them. Not every interaction that you have with them has to be a money-making interaction. And it's you have to have a good relationship with the teams that you lead. It's not about just getting them to sort of adopting a do-as-I-say approach. You know, you have to have this relationship forming. That has to be the basis of everything. That's what he's trying. But he says it's a struggle.
It is a struggle. I agree with you. So my question would be, given the state of affairs in the world at the moment, what tips or techniques do you believe people can use in their firms to bring about a change in attitude and understanding about the purpose behind their work? In other words, it's more than just about the money.
Well, first of all, we'd like them to actually look at the science. The science is overwhelming. If you look at and this is hard because it's not just firms, right? It's our whole society that hasn't yet understood what kind of creature that we're made up of. But I think if firms, cockatoo going by, if firms really focus on the fact that we are relationship and enjoying and learning creatures, that's what we do. We make relationships, we need enjoyment, and we need enjoyment to learn and make relationships, and they're all wound up together. And I think if you took that as a premise, and I think if you really took it seriously, rather than the values that you post up somewhere and everybody puts in their, you know, HubSpot or, you know, files away somewhere, then that would start to make a difference. And what would it look like? I think Bob and I have had a lot of success in firms where we bring people together in small groups and then a larger group, and we say, what would you need? How would you need to be with each other? What actions would you all need to agree to take to make you feel most fulfilled and effective? And really making people think about the moment by moment impact they have on each other. And sometimes you come up with just, really, you'd be amazed. Things like say good morning and good night, and you know, when you're not virtually, and virtual is a whole nother issue, but say good morning and goodbye when you leave. And somebody says that's good manners, and somebody else says, you know what, you're right, and we're not doing it. You know, so coming back, dragging ourselves back by working together to make sure that the interactions spruik the neurochemistry and the manifestation of our genes, basically, to make us the people that we want to be. And praise does it, and real curiosity does it. And as we said, giving needs and asking people what they need of us. These are very, very simple things, and they are radical. You should hear people in a room when we say, you know, praise is a good thing. Oh, I don't need praise. Oh, I couldn't give praise, you know, simple, simple things. And I think leaders have a responsibility somehow to make the space for that, but then also to encourage that process. Bob, you're smiling.
Also, yes, but also you've got to make law fun. The things that people perform best when they're having fun, we're designed that way. One of the very interesting things that we found very recently is the reason we have a large brain is to enable fun, is to enable enjoyment, is to enable play. You've got to make the work that a lawyer does and the work between the lawyer and the client fun. It's got to be an enjoyable enterprise. And people say, oh, you can't do it because inherently there's a conflict. In every legal matter, mostly there's a conflict going on between your client and someone else's client. And you say, how can you possibly make that fun? Well, you make that fun through the relationship. And the relationship you have with your client, that can be fun.
And with your team.
Dare I say maybe also the relationship with colleagues as well?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yes, even more so, yes.
But that requires several things. That does require top leadership intervention. I remember one practice group at a global law firm that I worked in that had this wonderful, wonderful leader of the practice group. And it was litigation, you know, disputes, which can be the most kind of disputational group. And he was this wonderful father figure who, if people had a problem, they would come to him and he would help them negotiate it and work it out. And that was so important. And you don't see that so much these days. But where I see people really getting caught is feeling that they have to be competitive with their fellow partners and not knowing how to negotiate those things and negotiate the relationship underneath it, build the trust. And these are simply skills that need to be learned and they need to be brought in, because without it, as we've been saying, if we don't, it just doesn't bear even thinking about if we don't learn how to do that, so people feel safe and supported.
May I ask, in your work and your research, have you noticed a change in attitude and capability amongst the younger generation coming into the legal profession?
They are very divided. They are very divided. I mean, you know, we used to be that people would come to us and say, you know, let's do a firm-wide skills practice to get our people into, you know, what they want more than anything else, becoming partners. And now they're coming to us and saying, could you help us make them want to be partners? You know, and it's a real issue. People look at it and say, is that what I really want? They're not having fun. They're exhausted. And they say partnership may be just more of that.
So is this an indication of what's known as the Great Resignation? Do you think law firms are going to be susceptible to the current trend?
They already are. Even before that hit the headlines, people were coming to us, as I say, and saying, you know, this is one of our major problems, this disengagement, and how do we fix it? And it's not a quick fix. They've got to do the things that we're talking about at the root level, because otherwise the future of law, I think, is in, as Bob and I were just discussing this morning when we were thinking of this discussion with you, the future of law will not look good if you can't engage people and make it worth their while being there, which means relationship, learning, and fun.
But it also means having a purpose in terms of law. I remember speaking to the managing partner of one of the world's largest law firms, and I was asking him, what's the purpose? Why should partners work for your particular firm? What's the purpose of the firm? And he said, well, the purpose of the firm is to allow partners to make as much money as they can, so you'll have a trickle down into the community. And this seemed to me about the most awful thing that I've ever heard. I mean, it's sort of Reaganomics for the law practice. I think one of the problems is that law has not worked out what its purpose is. The purpose used to be that law was lawyers were a way in which people interacted with the king and the king's council. Since then, then you had the village lawyer, and his purpose was to mediate problems within the village. And that sort of made a lot of sense. I don't think law firms at the moment have a purpose. I don't think anyone working in law firms at the moment feels that they're really purpose-driven, except in sort of places like Slater Gordon or whatever, where they're sort of acting for people who've been severely injured and things like that. Yes, you can have purpose in that sense. But I think in the major law firms, and perhaps in a lot of the smaller law firms as well, the sense of purpose is gone. And so therefore you have people working just for money. And the human brain doesn't work that way. And that's why we get stressed, and that's why we get depressed.
Indeed. If I can throw my 6 pennies worth in here, I found that regionally in New Zealand, an increasing number of firms are very aware of their purpose. Or if they're not, they want to be able to articulate it in a way that makes sense not only to them but to everyone that works in these firms, because I think they realise, particularly those firms that have been around in smaller country towns in New Zealand, they've been part of the fabric of the community, and so that they realise that they have played a large part in contributing towards society and the community, and I think that they have a good sense of who they are and the value that they contribute. as opposed to some of the larger firms where it is almost very competitive in terms of getting those corporate clients and going up the league table in terms of, you know, profit per equity partner and all the rest of it. That's been my observation, but I think you're absolutely right. And you know, I think that is the trampoline, if you like, forward, and it offers the motivational signposts for so many people. Would you agree in finding that purpose?
But that's absolutely right. And so therefore you have to reimagine what the law firm is there for. And you've got to reimagine what being a partner in a law firm is all about. And I don't think that fundamental rethinking has started yet.
Right.
And I worry when people paste purpose onto business as usual. You know, a large bank will say, you know, that our purpose is to make communities thrive, and then, you know, cut back on half of their workforce. I think, you know, if you're not taking care of the tribe in human ways, you can't take care of the larger tribe.
Yes.
And that contradiction, I think, is part of the problem.
Yes, yeah, a lot of contradictions. I wanted to ask you, Alicia, if I may, going forward, we've talked about the human skills that are probably going to get results in the future, and the need for capabilities to build relationships. To what extent do you see women leading the charge here in the future?
I think we have the enormous capability to do so. Some of the very senior women that I work with, some of whom I've worked with for a long, long time, you know, on the way up, are doing beautifully in terms of really putting relationships first, being supportive for their people, teaching by example how you are supportive, clear on their boundaries, and very value focused in that way, and it's beautiful. I think we are also vulnerable because we do have the capability to be more empathetic, just neurogenetically for all sorts of reasons, the capability, but it doesn't mean we always are. Put us in an environment where we're perhaps historically at least struggling to succeed anyway, and then put us in an environment in which competition seems to get you forward and therefore valued, which is what we all want, to be valued. Some of us have more difficulty coping, or at least playing the game and being seen to be collaborative sometimes, you know? So I think women can be very shredded in this environment with that diverse, you know, that contradictory message. But when it's good, it's very, very, very good and gives me so much hope.
That's excellent. And Bob, are you all equally hopeful?
Yeah, I've always been, as any reader of my newsletter, which I know you are, and so sort of thank you. Will tell you I'm a sort of, and as Alicia will tell you, I'm a feminist from way back. I think women make, on the whole, better leaders than men. I think there's an awful lot of science behind that. I think that unfortunately, sometimes women feel that they have to be like men in order to progress. And I think that's unfortunate for the firms and unfortunate for the women.
But Bob, I think Simon, weren't you asking, was he hopeful in general or hopeful about women?
Hopeful in general.
Yeah, Bob,
hopeful in general. Yes, I am. I'm very hopeful for law in general. But I think they have to make several huge changes. I think they have to relook at their whole business model. I think they have to relook at the way that they're led. And I think they must give an awful lot more attention to mental health within the organizations. And I think in those ways, if they can overcome those problems, then I think there's a huge future for law. But it'll be different. Yeah.
Very different. And presumably you touch on this in your latest book, which is about the second edition. There it is. The second edition is shortly about to come out, Leading the Future. I understand you've got a special offer for viewers of Law Chat as well.
Yes, they can get 30% off.
So Bob and Alicia, if they want to get hold of you to get a copy of the book, or also to tune into your newsletter, how's the best way to get hold of you?
The best way is either through our website, fortinberrymurray.com.
Well, look, thank you for that offer, and thank you for sharing your time. I know you've been really busy of late, so I greatly appreciate you giving up your time and joining us on Law Chat today. Fascinating discussion. I'd love it to go longer, but unfortunately our time is up. I told you time would fly by, but it's lovely to see you both, and I wish you all the best in the lead up to Christmas.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly. Thank you very much.
And I'll be the first to order a copy of that book, thank you, so I will be in touch.
Oh, you will get one, of course, with our
Lovely.
gratitude.
All right, look after yourselves. Take care now.
Take care now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.